Hey guys, happy Thursday. Thank you for stopping by for another video here at All I See is W. In today's video, I'll be talking about the latest macro scale updates. I'll also be covering my technical analysis of Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. We'll also cover the latest updates around the markets, where I think Bitcoin is headed, along with MicroStrategy. Now, if you're new to this channel, first off, I'm so grateful for you joining. I would really appreciate hitting the like, subscribing for more related content. What we've saw yesterday was one of the biggest stock market run-ups to date throughout entire history. However, today, of course, we're going to see some profit taking. There's some short selling, especially with such a big run up. I mean, seeing Nasdaq, S&P run up by double digits, that's not typical. We typically see it drop down that much, but to see it run up, it looks like it's running as if it's like crypto related altcoins. Now, most of you are wondering, where are we headed in the upcoming stock trading day for tomorrow with Bitcoin, and how will we start performing in the remainder of April onward in Q2, Q3, and the rest of 2025? We'll cover all of those updates. Let's begin, guys. Today we got positive news of consumer price index. In fact, we're seeing CPI actually going down. I mean, it's going down, 2.4%. CPI is a reflection of seeing whether we're combating inflation. And what we're seeing is inflation is going down over the course of time. And this is all thanks to the Trump administration, setting new regulations, bringing down inflation, which is one of the biggest factors that impact us as individuals. So even though we had positive data with CPI going down, the markets today, with S&P dropping by about 5%. When you look at it though, with such a big gain yesterday, we'll still consider that as a win, although volatility will remain as we see increased tensions with trade wars between United States and China. But just with the 90-day postponement of certain tariffs, I think that has really caused some relief, clarity, and that's why there is so much money inflows with investments yesterday. Taking a look at this visual here, what's interesting is, stocks soaring right after Trump clicks on that button, sending that social media posts. Here, when you look at Trump announcing yesterday in the morning, this is a great time to buy DJT. In fact, you can buy a stock DJT. What happened yesterday? It went up by 25%. So there was a slight uptick of like 2%. There was some confidence there. But what happened 4 hours later? The moment Trump announced the official 90-day pause, lowering tariffs to about 10% effective immediately, what happened? The markets love this. This drove huge inflows in stocks, Wall Street, even Bitcoin price started shooting up. That's just one of the biggest run-ups we've ever seen. It's amazing to see how much social media, especially with the Trump administration, any just posts on social media can just cause an influx in the markets. We've never seen this before, but that just shows how strong Trump, the president, is when it comes to his updates through social media. The Bitcoin therapist posts today that Bitcoin is going to 100,000 by end of month. That'll be nice to see Bitcoin get back up into that 100K. It's very possible. We'll see. Only time will tell, as we have another 3 weeks left in the month of April. Romeo posts today, remember that holding MSTR is like holding four aces in poker. You know you've won and are just waiting. That's an interesting analogy. When you think about it, having four aces loses to two hands, the straight and the royal flush. However, what's the probability of that happening? I would hold on to four aces all day, every day with an outlook of winning. Chris posts today, or yesterday, and that strategy is no longer a software company, it's a refinery company. Not one that extracts oil, but one that aggregates raw Bitcoin and standardizes it into a range of financial products ready for the world to consume, built to satisfy the needs of the entire investor spectrum wanting passive Bitcoin exposure and engineered to scale, turning volatility into financial fuel, turning Satoshi's invention into capital market instrument. When you invest in strategy, you're not just investing in Bitcoin, you're investing in the infrastructure that delivers it into the world. Strategy is a Bitcoin refinery. Seeing here, Bitcoin, think of that as a black hole sucking up all of that money to buy Bitcoin. And what happens as an output? Saylor has the different levers through dividends like MSTY, convertible bonds, equity ETFs, high risk ETFs like MSTX, MSTU, and different option plays through Strike and Strife. So Strategy has made a strategic decision to securitize Bitcoin as an asset class. So lovely visual created by Chris here. Chris also posts that strategy isn't just buying Bitcoin, it's leveraging it to move to traditional financial world. Traditional finance is rigid, anchored in centuries of inertia, heavy, slow, fragile, but a new fulcrum has emerged. Digital, finite, anti-fragile Bitcoin. Strategy is the mechanism that Michael Saylor is using to leverage Bitcoin and drive a seismic paradigm shift. Every Saturday is carefully stacked beneath the greatest monetary pivot in history. As Bitcoin appreciates, so too does strategy's ability to reshape traditional finance. Bitcoin is the hardest money ever known to humanity. Strategy is leveraging it to move the traditional finance world. You see Saylor, pulling that lever. Strategy is leveraging Bitcoin to move the financial world. And in the time frame of May, when you think about it, even Google Gemini, Google is partnering up with MicroStrategy for the event that's held in Florida in the next couple of weeks. Chris also posts, not too long ago that since adopting Bitcoin in 2020, so Saylor's been just buying up Bitcoin for the last 5 years, doesn't matter what the price is, if it's less than 10,000, if it's over 100,000, you name it, he'll just continue to buy up Bitcoin. That's the name of the game. What's interesting is strategy, each month they buy about 9,486 Bitcoin. Each week they buy 2,180 Bitcoin. Per day, they're buying up 311 Bitcoins. Per hour, that's 13 Bitcoins purchased. Can you think about it? Every hour that passes, strategy is just buying up more Bitcoin. Every minute that goes on, strategy buys about less than, a quarter percent. That's just huge. Given the fact that Bitcoin, there's only 21 million Bitcoins remaining, and you think about it, there's only about 5.5% left for Bitcoin miners to mine. Here's another interesting visual in that strategy is just 1,521 Bitcoin away from owning more Bitcoin than all governments combined. The government in total has about 529,705,000. That includes United States, China, but MSTR alone, they're right neck to neck with what the government owns. Of course, this doesn't factor in financial institutions like BlackRock. BlackRock has a big load as well. However, when you look at it through the lens of a public company like MicroStrategy, they are truly a Bitcoin bank. In the long term, they're just going to capitalize, just having Bitcoin leased out and getting paid on interest. With that in mind, I want to move over to technical analysis of Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. What we're seeing now is that Bitcoin is actually running up after today's drop off. One of the key supports is having Bitcoin hover around that $82,000. What we've been seeing is 82,000 is where Bitcoin has been hovering over the course of many weeks, since that retracement from the all-time high, back in like, March timeframe. It was hovering around that 82, 88,000. So if we can have Bitcoin just hover around that 82 support. I think the next leg up, what we want to see is whether market participants want to push up the price of Bitcoin above that 88,000. We may very well have Bitcoin start shooting up. It's just all a matter of time for Bitcoin to start running up. I think that we may very well see Bitcoin run up by end of the month or heading into Q3. Some people are forecasting that it may be Q3 where Bitcoin can very well get up to that 150,000, similar to what Tom Lee is forecasting. So he's brought down his forecast from like 200,000 to 180,000 to 150,000, which is about a 1x gain from where we are current state. So I think we're in a good state. Bitcoin tends to run once every 3 years, and then it enters a bear cycle. So 2025 Q1 has been a bad quarter, but I think that we're not out of the woods yet with all the market uncertainty. Bitcoin is the top asset, and for those reasons, Bitcoin is just going to dominate with its year-over-year performance, bypassing gold, even though gold today has reached this all-time high with great gains on gold as well. MicroStrategy today dropped by about 8%. Of course, with yesterday's gaining 25%, we'll take that loss of 8%. One of the key indicators is, having the market participants push the price up, especially with Bitcoin hovering above 80,000 now. I do think that as we open in the tomorrow's stock market, MSTR may very well do well, all dependent on how the markets react with the news. Just with the last several weeks, we've been just taking a big hit with Bitcoin price as well as Wall Street. What we saw Wednesday was historical. I think that we may very well see MicroStrategy hover up, get to that prior resistance around 340, have that new support line be established before we can start seeing this U-shape cup and handle or V shape, if you will, in the near term. So I think we're in a good state here. I would highly recommend just dollar cost averaging down if you're at that high cost average. If you have high conviction in MicroStrategy, long term, this company will win over the long term course. Sometimes when you invest, you just got to plant the seed, let the seed grow and flourish, not dig up the seed and look at it every instance to see how is it doing, because when you do that, then it's just going to cause a lot of challenges mentally and all that. But overall, just if you have conviction, just dollar cost average down over the course of time. MicroStrategy's market cap is just going to grow. And what does that mean? Shareholders are going to be awarded on the increase in the share price. So from my perspective, you know, reaching the prior resistance of 550, we may very well reach that sometime in this quarter or Q3, but Q4, who knows? Depending on where Bitcoin goes, let's say if it ramps up to 150,000, 750 is very likely for it to happen. So I wouldn't rule out MicroStrategy, with a top-notch CEO with a solid business model, taking on risks, really transforming traditional finance. I do think the technicals are looking pretty good here, just where we are at current state. With that, I want to play some video clips of Executive Director of Crypto, part of the Trump administration. We'll also hear from Senator Cynthia Lummis, as well as an epic clip from Michael Saylor.
I mean, look, there's a finite number of Bitcoin. We all know that. And I think that there will end up being a race in order to accumulate as much as you can get between other countries as well. I mean, look, people recognize this and people are smart in other places around the world. But we feel like with the internal working group and the folks, the president likes to say we have a lot of high IQ people in the room. I think we're going to find the best ways to accumulate as much as we can get in those budget neutral, ways that don't cost the taxpayer a dime.
The idea of a Bitcoin reserve. What I'm trying to figure out right now is whether it needs to be done legislatively or whether the Treasury Secretary has the authority to do it right now. And certainly President Trump has signed an executive order in support of a strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Really kind of at a perfect inflection point, because this is It's not a slow motion train wreck because that's the wrong metaphor. It's the opposite of a slow motion train wreck. It's a slow motion parade of wonderful things. They're all going to happen. We know they're going to happen. There's a 98% chance they're going to happen. I just can't tell you exactly the date they'll happen, but I think over the next 4 years, everything you could want that's good is going to happen. And so the market is discounting that. The market doesn't believe any of that. Right? So the idea that you could actually buy Bitcoin at 80,000 right now is a joke. What I said is when the bank lets you buy it, when Bank of America lets you buy it and you can just order it and buy $1 billion at a time, it'll cost you $1 million. And when the bank, when your traditional banker recommends it to you because it's growing 20% a year and it's risk-free in their opinion, it's going to cost you $10 million. And so you can wait until it's easy and risk-free and you'll pay 100 times as much. Or you can do the research and jump through a few hoops right now for Bitcoin and you get a 99% discount.
There you have it. We heard from Michael Saylor. Buying Bitcoin right now is at a 99% discount. It's going to millions of dollars. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed another episode where we talked about the macro scale updates. I shared with you my predictions of Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, along with updates with what we're seeing in the markets and Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. If you're new to this channel, I would really appreciate you hitting the like, subscribing for more related content. I'll see you on the next one, guys.